Democratic members of Congress joining demonstrators for a rally in Montgomery. And joining me now is New Jersey Senator Cory Booker, a member of the Foreign Relations and Judiciary Committees. Senator, welcome. Glad to have you here. I know it's a busy time there. We can hear someone speaking behind you. We've heard music. We've had a lot of impactful statements said today, but also festivities. But let's talk about the rally and what you hope will be accomplished by it today.
Yeah, well, I'm here in Alabama because my roots are here. I'm here because I know very consciously I'm the descendant of slaves in this country. I'm here because of Americans in times of trial, when the Supreme Court in Plessy versus Ferguson or Dred Scott or Korematsu took rights away from people. People didn't just accept that limitations on our democracy. They fought for bolder freedoms. And so that's why I'm here today. It's a rallying cry. This is a civic altar call of sorts to call people back together like we did a generation ago to better secure the rights that now seem to be so taken away by the Supreme Court.
And indeed, it is because that Supreme Court upheld the Virginia High Court's ruling from 2 weeks ago, essentially gutting the Voting Rights Act, effectively reducing black representation in Congress. So describe where that leaves voters and the makeup of Congress.
We declare and decree.
Well, it is echoes of what happened in the post-Reconstruction period, where people in places of power, in courts and legislators, passed all kind of laws to try to stop African Americans from having representation, to try to stop African Americans from exercising their rights as citizens. And so now, after the Supreme Court case, we see legislatures like this one here drawing congressional maps with surgical-like precision to stop African Americans from having a voice in Congress, eviscerating African-American representation from many states. And so this is unacceptable, not for black America, but for our America, for the America that believes in fair maps and fair democracies and fair voting. And so we have to respond to this by organizing and mobilizing, and that's what this is about today.
Do you have a guesstimate, sir, on how many black representatives could be lost in the House?
Yeah, they're talking about numbers from 10 to 25. We're watching states now scramble to figure out if they can get it done before this midterm election or if they're going to have to wait until the 2028 elections. They're saying the quiet part out loud. We know what they're going to try to do. And all Americans, I don't care what your background is, Republicans, independents, and Democrats all agree that partisan gerrymandering is unfair when people in power can concentrate that power, so even if they're in the minority, they still have more seats and more representations. That is fundamentally anti-democratic, and it must be stopped. But it's not going to be stopped automatically or inevitably. It has to be stopped by organized people mobilizing and demanding and electing people that will stop it.
So is that what it is? It's organizing? That's the best approach for Democrats in the midterms to fight back? And can or will Democrats still win the House despite this GOP gerrymandering? We see the numbers, and they seem to be ticking because of Republican efforts in the favor of Republicans picking up a lot more seats.
Well, I hear you putting this in a lens of partisan politics. I'm here in Alabama not because of partisan politics, but because I want to save our democratic system. This isn't just about who's got advantage, the right or the left of our political spectrum. This is about, will we have fairness at our elections? Every American should be invested in ending this madness that's been unleashed by a Supreme Court. Every American, whether you're a Republican in California or a Democrat in Texas, should say this serves nobody to have people doing this. And it especially is really desecrating our martyrs, people who died in Mississippi like Goodman, Cheney, and Schwerner, 4 black girls that died here in Alabama and Birmingham in a bombing. We know that there are people in our past generations to step up to stop just this. And so we can't allow it. I'm sorry, I'm not here as a Democrat. I'm here as an American.
You know what? You are 100% right on that. And
Meantime, you're facing a primary on Tuesday. In the wake of Senator Bill Cassidy's loss in the primaries yesterday in Louisiana, the president has been up posting on Truth Social throughout the night and into the morning about you. Just a few minutes ago, he posted this. I want to show our viewers right now. Bad Congressman Tom Massey voted against tax cuts, the border wall, our military enforcement. Actually, he voted against almost everything that is good. The worst congressman in history. Kentucky, vote the bum out on Tuesday. We can't live with this troublemaker for another 2 years. He's a true negative force. Your response?
Well, I think that's going to help my fundraising at thomasmassey.com. Every time he tweets about me, it's good for, some money coming in because people don't like that. And, how did this race become the most expensive race in the history of Congress for a primary? It's because 3 billionaires from outside of Kentucky have funneled millions of dollars in here. They're trying to buy a seat. And so it's not just the president's tweets. I could sustain those without a problem. It's because Miriam Adelson and Paul Singer have dumped money in here. In fact, Miriam Adelson has given so much money to my opponent that instead of paying for the ballroom, they're going to need taxpayer money for the ballroom now.
Well, you've actually said this week that your vote is a referendum on whether Israel gets to buy seats in Congress. What did you mean by that?
Well, the RJC, AIPAC, and Miriam Adelson and Paul Singer, they're all part of the Israeli lobby, and that's where all the money comes from. And it will be a referendum on foreign policy, whether Israel gets to dictate that by, bullying members of Congress. And I'm the one they haven't been able to bully, so they're putting all the brunt and the force on me. But you can tell that I'm ahead in the polls and they're desperate. That's why they're sending the Secretary of War to my district tomorrow. That's why the president's losing sleep and tweeting about this. That's why AIPAC has dumped another $3 million into my race this weekend. It's because they're panicked and they really haven't been able to gain a lead in this race.
You say the president is desperate, but he's got a pretty good record of defeating people he wants to target in Republican primaries. We saw Bill Cassidy yesterday. We saw what happened in Indiana. How are you going to be able to overcome the president's opposition?
Well, I have the endorsement of the Right to Life organizations, the gun organizations. I had 4 members of Congress come here yesterday and campaign with me. So my situation is a little bit different. Plus, I've had millions of dollars come in from the grassroots, tens of thousands of donors to my website, thomasmassey.com, and it's still coming in, and that's how we're going to beat them.
With transactional politics. Ethical transactionality has its space in this American democracy. Republicans are naked with it and often unethical with it. Democrats believe in slow progress, and we believe in proposing a commission which will consider studying how to solve a potential problem down the road. It's got to be time out for that because people are losing rights in real time when you don't take real action.
David,
tonight, the political world was rocked by 2 election results out of Georgia that Republicans never saw coming. What was supposed to be a routine night for the GOP turned into a major warning sign for Donald Trump and the Republican Party heading into the next national battle. Democrats pulled off 2 surprise victories in districts Republicans believed were safely under control, and now panic is beginning to spread across conservative circles. These races were not supposed to be competitive. Republican strategists entered Election Day confident they would hold both seats without much trouble. Conservative media barely paid attention. GOP donors focused their money elsewhere. Even local Republican leaders believed turnout would carry them across the finish line. But by the end of the night, Democrats had flipped the narrative completely. The first shock came in a heavily watched suburban district where Democratic organizers spent months quietly building momentum. Republicans assumed Trump's influence and conservative voter registration numbers would be enough. But Democratic turnout exploded, especially among younger voters, independents, and suburban women who have continued moving away from MAGA politics. As the numbers started coming in, Republican confidence quickly collapsed. County after county showed Democrats outperforming expectations. GOP officials reportedly became nervous behind the scenes as internal projections failed to match reality. By late evening, the race had officially been called for the Democratic candidate, stunning political analysts and leaving conservative commentators scrambling for answers. Then came the second defeat. In another Georgia contest Republicans believed they had locked down, Democrats once again surged ahead with stronger than expected turnout. This race was even more painful for the GOP because Trump allies had aggressively campaigned there, framing the election as proof that the MAGA movement still dominates Georgia politics. Instead, voters delivered the opposite message. Exit polling showed many independents and moderate conservatives expressing frustration with Republican extremism, constant election conspiracy rhetoric, and political chaos surrounding Trump's influence over the party. Several voters interviewed after casting ballots said they wanted stability instead of non-stop outrage and division. That message is now echoing nationwide. For Democrats, tonight's victories are being celebrated as evidence that Georgia remains a battleground state despite Republican efforts to reclaim total control. Democratic strategists argue the results prove voters are exhausted by Trump-style politics and are increasingly rejecting candidates tied too closely to the former president. For Republicans, the losses raise serious questions. How did the GOP lose 2 races they were expected to win? Why are suburban voters continuing to drift away from Republicans? And most importantly, is Trump becoming a political liability in key swing areas? These questions are now dominating conservative discussions tonight. Several Republican analysts openly admitted on television that the party may have underestimated Democratic energy once again. Others warned that Trump's continued focus on grievances from the 2020 election could be hurting Republicans with independent voters who care more about economic issues, healthcare, and stability. The defeats are especially embarrassing because Republicans spent weeks claiming momentum was shifting back in their favor nationwide. Trump himself recently insisted Republicans were stronger than ever in Georgia. But tonight's results tell a very different story. Democrats didn't just survive. They overperformed. And they did it in a state Republicans desperately needed to re-establish dominance in before the next presidential election cycle fully begins. Many Democrats are now comparing tonight's victories to the warning signs Republicans ignored before disappointing performances in previous midterm elections. Back then, GOP leaders also assumed polls and enthusiasm favored them, only to watch Democratic turnout shatter expectations. Now history may be repeating itself. Political insiders are already saying these Georgia results could impact fundraising, campaign strategy, and candidate recruitment moving forward. Donors pay attention to special elections because they often reveal deeper voter trends before national elections arrive. And tonight's trends are not good news for Trump or the GOP. One major concern for Republicans is turnout among younger voters. Early reports indicate Democrats dominated among voters under 35,